Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 23, The Tower of Terror. On their way to Lavender Town, the gang encounters some very thick fog, and immediately hold hands with each other as Brock suggests, so they don't lose each other. Ash and Misty do as Brock suggests, providing a strong shipping moment for the audience, as they hold hands. Brock is unfortunately unable to take his own advice, failing to grab Misty's hand and form a chain, only managing to grab Pikachu's tail, which causes him to get shocked, screaming loudly. Misty is terrified by the scream, causing her to let out a scream herself, scolding Brock for being so foolish as to grab Pikachu. Ash then tries to break the frightened tension that his friends are feeling, wanting to stop the constant screaming, putting on a stupid funny skull mask, and suddenly reveals himself to Misty and Brock, which only ends up scaring them more, annoying them so much that they yell even louder, and Pikachu shocks Ash. Ash rebuttals that Brock and Misty are going to need to be prepared to face surprises like that in the Pokemon Tower, the place where ghost Pokemon reside in Lavender Town. Speaking of Lavender Town, the gang eventually arrives at the tower by night after locating the town, but Brock and Misty refuse to enter, being too scared. Ash counters that he shouldn't have to go inside on his own, claiming that Brock and Misty promised they would assist him. The two wimps deny this, leading Ash to go to Pikachu as his only source of support. Even he denies him, though, going to sleep instead, being too tired due to the current hour. Ash decides to nap as well, likely because he was also too scared, simply not wanting to admit it. The next morning, Misty wakes up Ash with a gong, leaving Team Rocket, who was spying on the gang from inside the tower waiting for a chance to grab Ash's Pikachu, to laugh as Ash and Pikachu jump from their sleeping bags in terror. Jesse instructs James to go down the stairs to the lower floor so he can ambush Ash, but James falls through the floor before he can reach the door, not paying attention to where he was walking. Jesse and Meowth go check on James, distracting Jessie so much that she doesn't realize a Ghastly show up behind her from inside a closet. Meowth does, though, becoming frightened but still attempting to warn Jessie. His warnings fail as Ghastly disappears, as Jessie finally directs her attention to it, causing her not to believe him. Ghastly then reappears when Jessie looks away again, mocking her voice as punishment for not recognizing him, leading Meowth to try and scratch it, but it only disappears again, leading Meowth to only scratch Jessie. She gets pissed off at this, not understanding why Meowth scratched her, and knocks him into the hole with James using a mallet. Jessie then looks in her pocket mirror to assess the ugly scratch on her face, concerned about how it affects her beauty, when she finally notices Ghastly when he jump scares her by showing up in the mirror's view. She gets so caught off guard that she falls through the floor as well, landing on Meowth and James. All of their weight shatters the extremely old tower's floor, and they scream as the three of them fall through. They eventually wake up on an even lower floor, but scream once again and are knocked out in fear as the Ghastly shows up and scares them again. Ash and the gang hear these screams, deterring them from wanting to enter the tower even more. Ash mentions how the screams sounded familiar, probably due to the amount of times Team Rocket has blasted off screaming. Fucking repetitive bastards. Ash and the gang go inside anyway, as the doors creepily lock themselves, making the tower even darker than it would have been originally. This leads Ash to send out Charmander so he can use Flamethrower to provide some light, which it does successfully, although it is tired by doing so. So a frightened Misty takes the opportunity to suggest that they come back in the morning when it's naturally light out, so Charmander doesn't have to do any of the heavy lifting. Brock then grabs a candle, though, and simply has Charmander light it, allowing the candle to handle the rest. Unfortunately for Brock, when Charmander does light the candle, he lights Brock on fire as well. But now the gang is at least able to explore, coming across the hole that Team Rocket fell through, and hearing them scream. This freaks them out, as they're still unaware that Team Rocket is the one screaming. Meanwhile, a Haunter and a Gengar are watching a comedy program on TV, and are eventually met with Ghastly, who also sits down to watch. The three of them laugh uncontrollably at a dude getting hit by a sign. Like, their humor's more broken than Gen Alpha. How the fuck is that funny, guys? As for our gang, they have now entered a mysterious room, with Brock asking for any ghost Pokemon to come out. Ash joins in on the wish, claiming that he wanted to catch them, with Misty rebutting that would just scare them away. The lights then magically turn on, revealing a dining table, and deploying a pull me sign. Ash decides to pull it as it releases confetti, and a whole bunch of shenanigans start to ensue. This includes a chair coming out of nowhere and sweeping up Brock, all of the glassware on the table beginning to levitate and picking up Pikachu and Charmander. I mean, it's fucking utter chaos, man. But at least Ash and the gang, along with Charmander and Pikachu, are able to quickly get away, running out of the tower, as the ones behind this levitation were the Gengar, Ghastly, and Haunter from earlier, and all they wanted to do was a little trolling, man. They didn't have any intention to harm anybody. Despite this, Misty and Brock absolutely refuse to go back into the tower, being terrified of that happening again. So Ash decides to rely on only his Pokemon, telling Charmander and Pikachu to come in with him, but they deny as well, being scared, with Charmander using Flamethrower on Ash and the gang in protest. Ash rebuttals that Charmander and Pikachu were being cowards, telling them that they would never be able to beat Sabrina if they were cowards. This causes Pikachu to remember the immense beatdown that he took in his first battle with her, which motivates him to want to go in so he can have the chance to face her again. Charmander decides to come along as well, after some motivation from Ash. But Brock and Misty still decide to wimp out, staying outside, much to Ash's dismay. Ash returns to the hole where he heard screaming before, and tries to get the Pokédex to identify a Pokémon that could be the source of the scream, but it comes up with no information. So, Ash just decides to have Pikachu and Charmander attack with their Thundershock and Flamethrower down there, not knowing it was Team Rocket down there, not a Pokémon, and then throws a Pokeball down, attempting to catch the Pokemon. The Pokeball hits Jessie in the face, which angers her. Her anger is only amplified tenfold, though, when she discovers that Charmander's attack has set her hair on fire, and she runs around rapidly to try and put it out, but eventually she just faints, due to the sheer anger that she was feeling. Ash looks down and sees the fire from Jessie's hair completely extinguish as she falls over, much to his disappointment, as he was amused by the fireball, as a typical 10-year-old would be. Jessie eventually comes to and begins crying over her messed up beauty look, leading Ash to look down and question where all that crying was coming from, still believing it's come from a Pokemon. However, though, the only Pokemon was a Haunter who had appeared behind him and attempted to jump scare Pikachu, disappearing straight after, right as Pikachu yelped. Haunter then laughs as he reappears, scaring Ash this time, leading Ash to identify Haunter with his Pokédex. But unfortunately, his Pokédex gives him no catching tips, so he just decides to send in Charmander willy-nilly. But Charmander can't even do anything, as Haunter, being the little troll that he is, has disappeared again, and quickly reappears, just to scare Ash yet again. Like, does he ever get sick of scaring? Like, all he does is just disappear and reappear, disappear and reappear. Charmander then uses Leer on the Haunter to attempt to scare it, like Haunter likes to do, but eventually switches to doing a funny face instead, in an attempt to make the Haunter laugh and catch it off guard. Ash disapproves of Charmander's strategy, scolding him for it. This scolding backfires, though, as it distracts Charmander, giving Haunter the opportunity to lick it. This lick makes Charmander start shaking, leading Ash to recall it back to its Pokeball, knowing Charmander didn't stand a chance. Just then, a Gengar shows up, using its ghostly powers to materialize from under the floor and smack Ash with a fan, much to his annoyance. Ash then checks his Pokédex, not having seen Gengar before, but it's useless once again. And honestly, it has an excuse this time. It doesn't have any data. Unlike Haunter, which it had seen before. The Haunter and Gengar then try to make Ash laugh using another way as opposed to their pranks, being a comedy routine, but Ash heavily criticizes them, claiming that they're not funny, which deeply saddens them, to the point where they try to shamefully retreat beneath the floor. Ash tries to lunge at them before they escape to the lower floor, but they do, and he ends up just crashing into the floor. His crash causes the chandelier, being super old, to fall from the ceiling and crush him and Pikachu. Pikachu can only let out a small thundershock before he passes out along with Ash, and they're now near death. Thankfully for them, though, Pikachu's thundershock makes the bulbs on the chandelier light up, which impresses the Haunter, Ghastly, and Gengar, so much so that they decide to extract Ash and Pikachu's remainder of their souls from their bodies, turning them into ghosts, assuming that they were ready and willing to be ghosts since they were so close to death. Ash, however, freaks out, obviously, when he finds out that he's a ghost, claiming that he wasn't ready yet, stating he wanted to complete his gym journey first and become a Pokemon Master. Ghastly, Haunter, and Gengar ignore Ash's statements, simply taking him and Pikachu up to view Lavender Town from up in the sky, which they are amazed at the view. But then, they spot Misty and Brock, who are concerned about Ash's well-being. Ash decides to play a little prank on Misty, teasing her for being concerned about him after all, despite their constant bickering, hinting at more shipping between them, oh my god. But then, Ash decides to take the prank a little too far, and picks her up and drops her on the ground, but thankfully Brock catches her so she doesn't get injured or nothing. Misty, having heard Ash's voice while being levitated, alerts Brock, and they run into the tower to go find him. Meanwhile, Ash and Pikachu fly around with the ghost Pokemon, with Ash playfully going through Haunter's mouth. They then return to the Haunter, Ghastly, and Gengar's playroom, where they reveal that all they were really looking for this whole time was new people to join their little prank act, so that they could play together and have more fun, as just the three of them gets lonely after a while. Ash is flattered that the ghost Pokemon see him as a potential playmate, but he reaffirms that he really wants to become a Pokemon Master, so he needs to go back to his body and continue his journey as a mortal human. The ghosts are obviously upset at this, but respecting Ash, they decide to grant his wish, bringing Ash and Pikachu back to their bodies where Misty and Brock were trying to get them to wake up, and returning their spirits with no issues whatsoever, causing Ash to come to once again, much to the relief of Brock and Misty, and causing Misty to blush. Yet another shipping moment between them. Why did this episode of all episodes have this many shipping moments? The next morning, the gang decide to leave the tower, and Ash decides to not capture any of the ghost Pokemon, respecting them too much. Despite this, Haunter shows up and makes a funny face, which scares Misty and Brock away, but makes Ash laugh. This makes Ash realize that using humor on Sabrina may be as effective as trying to scare her with ghost-type attacks. Haunter then decides to come with Ash, although not going in a Pokeball or anything, just joining him as a momentary ally to help him with Sabrina on his quest to become a Pokemon Master. Meanwhile, the episode ends with more goofs and gaffs, as Haunter and Gengar have found new playmates after all, being Team Rocket, who they've tied to the horse carousel inside their playroom, and are laughing their asses off as they watch them spin endlessly. Well, until they inevitably break out to cause even more fucking trouble.